What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews. After Avengers Infinity War, many people were saddened or even confused with the death of Loki. However, after watching Avengers Endgame, I really do believe that Loki has completely fooled everyone. I mean, if what I think happens ends up being true, I think it'll blow people away once they realize how Loki has pulled the greatest trick that only the God of Mischief could ever pull. So today, I'm going to share my theory with you all because I don't think many people have put this interesting connection together. You don't want to miss this, it's going to be a doozy. Coming up next. I'd like to start with a confession. If you've seen my Avengers Endgame spoiler review video, I mentioned in there that I was going to share with you all a theory I had about Loki. I was super excited about this theory, and I actually had most of it all worked out at the time. However, the main reason why I didn't release it earlier was because the Russo brothers were doing a ton of press tours explaining various details about Endgame. They basically confirmed that the multiverse existed, and Loki would have created an alternate reality in Avengers Endgame. You then had a situation where the screenwriters refuted the theory of the Russo brothers of an alternate reality and multiverse when they were discussing the details of how Old Man Captain America returned to the present timeline. Then you have Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, come on Reddit recently to hold a public Q&A. When a user asked him if he could give a definite answer to the contradicting interpretations between the writers and the directors, Feige merely responded with, yes. Finally, to make matters even more confusing, we also had the recent trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, where it was said that Mysterio is a visitor from an alternate Earth thanks to the Infinity Gauntlet snap. Well, as most of us comic fans know, Mysterio is a con man, so obviously we can't trust him. We also know that the Russo brothers are a bunch of liars, so there goes that. And with Kevin Feige being all vague about stuff, there is a small chance that the multiverse is something to be maybe skeptical of for the time being. With that, I'm going to present to you all my theory on Loki just for the fun of it. I know there's probably a good chance that it's not going to pan out, but as with any fan theory, these things are all here just for fun until we get to the Disney Plus streaming show, which I believe will reveal what Loki has really been up to all this time. In this theory, I'm going to throw out an idea to you all about how Loki can actually fit into the current MCU timeline without creating an alternate reality in the multiverse. Plus, while all that is happening, I'll also demonstrate to you how Loki could have pulled his greatest trick ever. Okay, on to the theory. As we go to Avengers Endgame, the 2023 Avengers went back into time to 2012 when Thor was about to take Loki and the Tesseract back to Asgard. 2023 Tony Stark, disguised as a SHIELD agent, dropped the Tesseract, and 2012 Loki picked it up and teleported away. As we learned from the Ancient One in Avengers Endgame, removing the Infinity Stones can not only leave that reality or timeline in major peril against evil, but it can also create a branched reality. Now, rather than just going with the idea that Loki created an alternate reality by stealing the Tesseract, I mentioned earlier that I want to keep this consistent within the primary MCU history. So I believe Loki doesn't actually steal the Tesseract, but instead momentarily borrows it. I think Loki would be smart enough to know that if Thor or the Avengers knew he was missing or had escaped, they would of course come back looking for him. So I believe at this point, right after he teleported away and 2012 Thor was asking, "Where's Loki?" Loki made a duplicate of himself, switched the handcuffs to be placed on the double, and teleported his double with the Tesseract in hand back into Thor's custody. Now, let's pause for a moment in order to consider Loki's magical powers. We know that Loki has the ability to create illusions. When Loki would use this magic, his illusions were almost like 3D, lifelike holograms. This was magic that he probably learned from his mother Frigga. We saw that not only could Loki cast illusions upon himself, but he could also cast them on other people. As a matter of fact, Loki could even create an illusion upon his surrounding environment, which by the way looks kind of like how Thanos did with the Reality Stone. Similar to his mother's magic, Loki's magic would only last until it was touched or he released a spell. However, this does not explain what we see in Thor 2. During that scene when Loki gets physically stabbed, we saw that he was definitely alive and even took on the appearance of an Asgardian soldier. I believe it is at this point that we have our best confirmation that Loki's magic has developed to a new level. Loki did tell Thor in Avengers 1 that he's not the same from before.
I've seen worlds you've never known about. I have grown, Odin's son, in my exile.
So I believe that Loki's new magical powers include the ability to make physical doubles or clones of himself. For you anime fans, imagine that this is very similar to Naruto's ability to create fully functional shadow clones of himself. Now this ability of course would supersede the previous illusion tricks that we all thought Loki was only capable of doing. Furthermore, there's the possibility that Loki's magic can perform lower levels of illusions as well. Maybe his own double can create illusionary tricks too. All I'm saying is that we should consider within this theory that we don't truly know how powerful Loki's magic can be. After all, Marvel has routinely made it a habit to power up their characters within the MCU. So would it really be unreasonable to presume that Loki has grown in his magical abilities? Loki is the god of mischief, so let's just assume that he's capable of taking his magic to new heights that we can only imagine. Okay, back to the theory. If Loki is truly capable of creating doubles of himself, then it would be pretty genius of him to send a double back in his place. Think about it. By using the tesseract to quickly escape the confusion and sending a double back with the tesseract in hand, no one would be wiser about the whereabouts of the real Loki. Don't forget that the 2012 version of Thor is still gullible when it comes to falling for Loki's tricks too. Now let's fast forward to 2013 where Loki is presented to Odin and sentenced to life in prison. Keep in mind that I still believe that this is Loki's double at play. Meanwhile, during the commotion happening with the Dark Elves breaking criminals out of the prison, who's to say that the real Loki didn't sneak into Odin's vault and snatch the real tesseract? Everyone, including Odin, was preoccupied with other matters, so the real Loki could walk right in completely unnoticed. We then fast forward through the events of Thor Dark World until we get to Loki's heroic moment where he not only saves Jane Foster from being killed, but he also tries to save Thor from being killed too. Does that sound a little familiar? Well, we see Loki get stabbed, and before he dies, he has a very touching final moment with his brother Thor. Wait, are you guys sure this doesn't seem too familiar? Okay, after Thor leaves, we see Loki come out of literally nowhere to appear on screen. Could that have been the real Loki using the tesseract? With his double faking his death, Loki basically made Thor completely stop thinking about him. Not to mention, he got a chance to see his brother mourn for him a little bit. And let's be real about this, Loki does seem to have a peculiar interest in Thor's mourning for him.
I thought you dead.
Did you mourn?
We all did.
So given the ending in Thor Dark World, we see that Loki has replaced Odin and begins impersonating him from that point on. What this essentially means is that from the year 2013 to 2018, between the events of Thor Dark World to Thor Ragnarok, we would have 5 years where Loki is in control of not only Asgard under the guise of Odin, but he also has control of the Tesseract. Don't forget that during those 5 years, it is believed that the Tesseract has been in Odin's treasure room the entire time. Loki could have access to the Tesseract at any point and no one would check for him because he's pretending to be Odin. He could also travel literally anywhere in an instant with the Tesseract's power, and that could mean a ton of adventures for the God of Mischief. So even if Loki did take the Tesseract on random adventures, it would not create an alternate timeline. The important thing to consider is that Loki would have to bring the Tesseract back to the treasure room before the events of Thor Ragnarok. And to keep things in line with the MCU primary reality, I'm going to assume that Loki does just that. After his 5-year run of manipulating history within his streaming show, we see Loki return to Asgard, still impersonating Odin, until Thor returns after defeating Surtur. Of course, we see Thor foil Loki's plan, Odin passes away and they fight against Hela. And as we saw, before Asgard is destroyed, the real Loki yet again takes the tesseract. Now we can jump to the events of Infinity War. With the real Loki knowing fully well that Thanos' ship is about to invade, it's entirely possible that he once again does the same trick of creating a double of himself. Given the fact that we were never shown the events that transpired right before Thanos beat up all the Asgardians, it is entirely possible to think that Loki had more than enough time to create a double, transport his real self to a safe location, and leave the double with the actual tesseract. Now you might be asking yourself, why would Loki send his double back with the real tesseract? Why not just escape with the tesseract and flee to safety? Well, it's for similar reasons that I proposed earlier in this video. Keep in mind that Loki knows exactly the pickle that the Asgardians are in and who they're dealing with. More specifically, Loki knows exactly how much trouble he's in with Thanos. Remember that Loki failed to bring Thanos the Tesseract from the first Avengers movie. Since Loki knows he can't evade Thanos, even if he gave him the Tesseract, the next best thing to do is simply to fake your own death. So if Loki does have the magical ability to create physical doubles of himself, and since he was in possession of the Tesseract while on the ship, and since he's faked a physical death before, I do think that it's possible that Loki fooled everyone, including Thanos, with his own death. If we go back to that scene, let's think about what Loki says and does for a moment. Loki specifically tells Thor, "I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again." Why was Loki so confident in that moment? Well, if he just so happened to be planning his own fake death, that would certainly be a reason. Another thing that many people noticed was just how phony of a move Loki attempted when he tried to come at Thanos with a puny little dagger. Seriously, let's think about this for a second. Loki just witnessed Thanos tucking the Hulk into bed and reading him a bedtime story. He also knows that Thanos has the Power Infinity Stone at his disposal. Why would such a devious and cunning thinker like Loki believe that a mere dagger would be enough to kill Thanos? And let's not forget, Loki is, after all, a very experienced fighter. It's not like he would assume that such a basic, ridiculous fighting trick like that would work on a warrior like Thanos. The only logical explanation I can think of is that Loki clearly wanted Thanos to kill him, or in this case, his double. Because again, Thanos can't kill you if he really thinks you're already dead, right? And as expected, we have Thor mourning for Loki's death again. See, I told you this sounded familiar. Plus, for those of you who were saying, how come Loki didn't turn blue when he died in Infinity War? Well, he certainly didn't turn blue in Thor Dark World when he supposedly died there either. So could it be that Loki has indeed pulled a fast one on everyone again? I mean, it's not like Marvel hasn't shown us a certain pattern with Loki before. Loki has appeared to die, then he steals the Tesseract, then he dies and steals the Tesseract again, then die again, only to, you guessed it, steal the Tesseract. So you all tell me, what do you think? Do you think Marvel will find a way to maybe have Loki, the god of mischief, pull a fast one on everyone? Could Loki have possibly been alive during the events of Infinity War, and he's simply been hiding in the shadows and keeping a low profile? As I said earlier, it's entirely possible that Marvel goes in a completely different direction. Maybe they follow the Russo brothers' multiverse theory and create a completely new story for Loki. Now, I do think that that seems more likely because it will allow them to just make up whatever they want. I also believe that doing the multiverse theory with alternate realities just feels a little too easy. I personally like the idea of Marvel just filling in the gaps of the history we already know, so that way it just feels like a bigger payoff for those of us who've been watching for all these years. But you guys let me know what you think about this theory, and maybe if you'd prefer an outcome like this to happen instead. I personally think that this falls right in line with the capabilities of the God of Mischief, and I'm really excited to see what you all have to think in the comments down below. Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate you all taking the time to watch my video. If you think you know a friend who might enjoy this video, please feel free to share it with them. If you're new to my channel and like videos like these, please consider subscribing and becoming a member of the E-Team. Don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on a new video too. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.